Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Aschatya Desha Tarini He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So welcome to the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami, chapter 22, which we have entitled as the heart of Sanatana Shiksha. Yesterday we were discussing how Mahaprabhu is explaining the limbs of sadhana bhakti. So we went through the limbs, and then these 5 limbs which were discussed in this verse: Alpasanga, Krishna Prema Janmaya. And yesterday we discussed quite in detail why, although we perform these 5 potent limbs, why we don't, get Krishna Prema. One of the reasons is that we have still not taken up to Ananya Bhakti, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. The second reason being because of offenses. And the third reason, which is very much connected to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is that all these angas have some very deep meanings. It's not just Bhagavad Shravan. It is Bhagavad Ratsa Asvadan Rasika Saha. It's not just deity worship, Murti Seva, but Shraddhaya Preeti, with full faith and full love. It's not just Kirtan, Nam Kirtan. It is chanting the holy names without offenses. Those will immediately bestow Krishna Prema. So we again saw the list of the first 20 limbs and the next 39 limbs and the last 5, which are important limbs. And Mahaprabhu discusses all these 5 limbs. Yesterday we went through these 5 limbs. And then the concept of Eka Anga and Bahu Anga. And Eka Anga we saw, although these personalities attend, but who are these personalities? They are part of Krishna Leela. So for us as sadhakas, we should practice many limbs, and we might have one taste for one limb more. Just like somebody has more taste for chanting, uh, although he's doing deity worship and Vaishnav Seva and reading Bhagavatam. So one should practice as many limbs as possible uh, in order to attain perfection. But in the stage of Raganusa sadhana, he will develop taste for one of the limbs. That is there. But to attain perfection by only practicing one limb is possible. But looking into the personalities who perfected in each of the limbs, we have to see for sadhakas, best is to engage all the senses in Krishna service. So that's where yesterday we completed our discussion, and we began on how one doesn't have obligations if he is taken up to bhakti. And we discussed quite in detail who is that one who is free from all material desires and completely engages. He is not indebted. And this also was emphatically Mahaprabhu's quoting. And here also taken full shelter, Sarvatmana. For him, this verse applies. So yesterday we discussed that and we came to this verse. So today we will continue from this verse onwards. Okay. Vidhi dharma chadi baje Krishna charan nishiddha papachare tara kabu nahi mane. Although the pure devotee does not follow all the regulative principles of Varnashram, Vidhi dharma chade baje Krishna charan. He worships the lotus feet of Krishna, bhaje Krishna charan. Therefore, he naturally has no tendency to commit sin. Now, again, what is more important to be noted in this translation? Whom does this verse apply? One who can give up, the Varnashram dharma. Whom does it apply? Who will answer this? Whom does it apply? Yes, Ranganath Charan Prabhuji.
Prabhu.
Yes.
I believe this applies to only Uttama Bhakta.
Uttama Bhakta, not the Madhyama?
No.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Anyone else? Whom does this verse apply? This verse, it's mentioned, although the pure devotee. So there is a gradation of purity. Kanishta are also pure, but there is more purity in Madhyama and most pure are the Uttamas. So this applies specifically to one who is on the transcendental platform by practicing Ananya Bhakti, and that applies to more Madhyamadhikaris and Uttamadhikaris from Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu perspective, I'm telling you. So one who is on the transcendental platform, he is given up his nature, conditional nature. So for him, Vidhi Dharma, he can chadi, he can give. Because a Madhyamadhikari is also, what is the symptom of a Madhyamadhikari? Mahaprabhu says, Nirantara Naam lo hai. He is continuously taking the name. So he is not performing duties based on his subtle body because he is always doing Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantasya Vridavrata. So for him, it will not apply. Whereas those who have not come to this platform, for them, Varnashram rules are important. Why? Prabhupada is going to bring out that in the purport. Let us see. The Varnashram institution is planned in such a way that one will not commit sinful activities. Now, please mark this statement. And if you are, you can observe, even in the society of practicing devotees, they are taken up to following the regulative principle, chanting 16 rounds minimum. But sometimes many get involved in sinful activities. Yes or no? Raise your hands who agree to. Yes. Virendra Yadav Prabhuji, what do you think?
Oh, I missed the link. I missed the link.
Yeah. It mentions that the Varnashram institution is planned in such a way that one will not commit sinful activities. So now we devotees from a sinful background straight, we have come to take the practice of Krishna consciousness. And although many take up to Krishna consciousness of following the 4 regulative principles, chanting 16 rounds, but many also are still, because of their, vasanas, they do commit sinful activities. Yes or no? My question was.
Yes, true, it is there, but Krishna says, Ham Tom Sarva Papebhyam.
Oh, but they no. You cannot apply that verse there. Sarva dharman parityajya. You cannot apply. Aham tam sarva papebhyam. That you cannot apply. Because if he is at the platform of Sarva dharman parityajya, then there's no question of that there is any sinful propensity in his heart.
Yes.
So sadhakas, because their conditional state is there are unlimited vasanas, they are battling with their vasanas, and there is, they have not come to the stage of practicing Ananya Bhakti. They have not come to that stage of practicing Ananya Bhakti because still the conditioning is there and they are battling with their conditioning. Sometimes they are, doing well in Krishna consciousness, sometimes they fall trap to Maya. They're not able to strictly follow the regulative principles. All that battle is going on. That means they're still committing sinful activities. But the Varnashram institution, if one is in the Varnashram institution, it will help us to be in the mode of goodness and not commit sinful activities. And from there, that can be a launching pad by which we can take up to Ananya Bhakti. It can be a favorable platform for us to take to Ananya Bhakti. And that's why Prabhupada wanted to establish the Varnashram institution. Material existence continues due to sinful activity. When one acts sinfully in this life, he gets a suitable body for the next life. When one again acts sinfully, he takes on another material body. In this way, one is continuously under the influence of material nature. Karana guna sangasya sad asad yoni janmasu. Oh, Prabhupada is quoting the same verse. Purusha prakriti stohi bhongte prakritin jan gunan. Karanam guna sangasya sad asad yoni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the 3 modes of material nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. Due to our association with the modes of material nature, we get different types of bodies, good and bad. One cannot be liberated from the cycle of birth and death known as transmigration of soul unless one is completely freed from all sinful activities. Please mind and note that the 4 regulative principles are sub-religious principles to come to the human platform so that we don't commit any sins, so that we can be in the mode of goodness and chant Hare Krishna. So most of the sadhakas struggle with their conditioning of these habits or of other habits because of conditioning in this life or previous lives. So how important it is to be in the Varnashram setup so that all your activities are in the mode of goodness and there's no influence of passion and ignorance, because of which you get influenced by lust and greed. Otherwise, this is the situation Prabhupada is explaining. The best process, therefore, is to take up to Krishna consciousness. One cannot take to Krishna consciousness without being freed from all sinful activities. Esham to antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvanda moha nirmukta bhajante mam drida vrata. Now, this verse has twofold application. One takes up to Krishna consciousness because he is purified, he is able to take up to Krishna consciousness, and that time also Prabhupada applies this verse. Esham tu antagatam papam. At another level, when one becomes free from papa and punya, sukrututta anartha and dushkrututta anartha. Esham tu antagatam papam. Jananam punya karmanam. By performing lot of devotional activities, punya karmanam there refers to devotional activities. Then one's bhajan becomes steady. And that is at the stage of nishta. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata seva. Bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So both ways you can apply this. Naturally, one who is very serious about Krishna consciousness is freed from all sinful activity. Consequently, a devotee is never inclined to commit sins. If one is pressurized by the law or obligations to give up sinful activity, one cannot do so. However, if one takes to Krishna consciousness, he can very easily give up all sinful activity. This is confirmed herein. Okay, so now Mahaprabhu mentions that he is not having the tendency to commit sin. But if he commits, then what happens? Ajnaneya yadi papa upasthita krishnatan rashuddha kare nakaraye prashrita. If a devotee accidentally becomes involved in a sinful activity, Krishna purifies him. He does not have to undergo the regulative form of atonement. According to the Karma Kanda scriptures, one who's in the Dharma Shastra, it is mentioned, if one is in the Varnashram and if he commits a sin, then he has to take to the Prashtit Vidhi, which is mentioned. But if a devotee, now here a devotee also means one who is taken up to Ananya Bhakti. One who has taken up to Ananya Bhakti, there is no question that he will commit sin. Very rare it is. But accidentally, if he commits a sin, then Krishna will purify him. Now, what about those who are Mishra? Those who have not come to that Purna Shraddha and come to that level of Sharnagati where they have taken up to Ananya Bhakti, for them, it is best they situate in the Varnashram, lead a very pure life, and more practice the angas of devotional service to come to the point of Purna Shraddha or Sharnagati, where they take up to Ananya Bhakti. Otherwise, we are caught up in the net. We are neither in the Varnashram, getting slowly purified, nor we are in the Ananya Bhakti. And to go to Ananya Bhakti, Varnashram is the best platform. I hope you are following. Krishna purifies from within as the Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within the heart. This is described in the following verse from the Bhagavatam. Swapada moolam bhajata priyasya tektvanya bhavasya hari pareshah vikarma yachot patitam kadachit dhunoti sarvam ridisanya vishtah. One who has given up everything, tektva anya bhavasya, and taken full shelter at the lotus feet of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Swapada moolam bhajata priyasya, Hare Paresha, is very dear to Krishna, priyasya. If he is involved in some sinful activity by accident, vikarmam yat chot patitam kadachit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, Paresha, who is situated in everyone's heart. Ridhi Sanya Vishta removes his sins without difficulty. Dhunoti Sarvam. So here, one who has given up everything, who has taken full shelter this applies to him, this verse. Please remember that. Okay. Jnana Vairagadi Bhaktira Kabu Nahi Anga Ahimsa Yama Niyamadi Bhule Krishna Bhakta Sangha. The path of speculative knowledge and renunciation is not essential for devotional service. Indeed, good qualities such as non-violence and control of the mind and senses automatically accompany a devotee of Lord Krishna. Ahimsa, non-violence, yam niyamadi, control of mind and senses, automatically accompany the devotee. Purport. Sometimes a devotee or ordinary person thinks highly of speculative knowledge, austerity, penances, and renunciation, thinking them the only path for advancement in devotional service. Actually, this is not a fact. The path of knowledge, mystic yoga, and renunciation have nothing to do with the pure soul. When one is temporarily in the material world, such processes may help a little. This is also the stand what Rupa Goswami takes in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that Jnana and Vairagya are not the limbs of Bhakti. In the Sadhana Bhakti limbs, 64 limbs, whatever we studied up till now, we did not see Jnana and Vairagya as limbs of Bhakti. But they are helpful in the beginning, he says. But if one is taken to Ananya Bhakti, then they are not limbs. But if one is still not taken to Ananya Bhakti, then it is better for him to be situated in Varnashram and practice the rules. There also, those rules of Varnashram which are favorable, which will take us towards Ananya Bhakti. In the material world, such activities end up in material enjoyment or merging in the effulgence of Supreme. They have nothing to do with the eternal loving service of the Lord. If one abandons speculative knowledge and simply engages in devotional service, he has attained his perfection. A devotee has no need for speculative knowledge, pious activity, or mystic yoga. All these are automatically present when one renders the Lord transcendental loving service. And now Mahaprabhu gives scriptural proof for this point, what he made in the previous verse, for this verse. Jnana Vairagya. Krishna himself says, Tasman mad bhakti yuktasya yogino vai madvatmaka atmana na jnanam na cha vairagyam prayo shreyo bhavetiha. For one who is fully engaged in my devotional service, Tasman mad bhakti yuktasya, whose mind is fixed on me in bhakti yoga, yogino vai my mad atmaka. The path of speculative knowledge and dry renunciation is not beneficial. Now again, kindly note this reference and tell me whom this verse is applying. What are the criteria set up here in this verse? Who will answer this? What is the criteria set up and whom this verse is applicable, and what are the two criteria set up here? Anyone? Sati Prabhuji, yes. Yes.
Hare Krishna Dandath Anukulena and Krishna Anushilana.
No. In the verse, you tell me, in this verse translation, what are the two criteria which is mentioned?
Fully engaged in my devotional service.
Okay.
Mind is fixed on me in Bhakti Yoga.
Yes. So we have to see whether we are fully engaged in devotional service. One. That means we are only performing the angas of bhakti and we are not performing any actions based on our conditional nature. First. And whether our mind is always fixed on Krishna. And as I was mentioning, only at the stage of Nishtha onwards, the mind is fixed on Krishna. Till then, it is a battle. So only for him, one who has taken up to Ananya Bhakti practically one takes up at the stage of Madhyamadhikari stage, which is Nishtha, they say. So, na jnanam, na cha vairagyam, prayo. So then these are not the limbs. So Rup Goswami also, when he discusses in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he quotes the same verse as a reference. The path of devotional service is always independent of other activity. The path of speculative knowledge and mystic yoga may be little beneficial in the beginning. As I had mentioned, Prabhupada is also saying the same thing. But it cannot be considered part of devotional service. This verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, was spoken by Lord Krishna when he was speaking to the before his departure from this material world. These are important instructions given directly by Lord Krishna. Shri Uddhava asked the Lord about the two kinds of instructions given in the Vedas. One instruction is called Pravritti Marg and other is called Nivritti Marg. These are directions for enjoying the material world according to regulative principles and then giving up the material world for higher spiritual understanding. Sometimes one does not know whether to practice speculative knowledge and mystic yoga for advancement in spiritual knowledge. Krishna explains to Uddhav that the mechanical process of speculative knowledge and yoga is not necessary for advancing in devotional service. Devotional service is completely spiritual. It has nothing to do with material things. It is awakened by hearing and chanting in the association of devotees. Because devotional service is always transcendental, it has nothing to do with material activity. But devotee also has to be also transcendental to practice devotional service. Now, again a reference is given. Etena hi adbhuta vyada tavahim sadayo guna hari bhakto pravrittaye na te sui paratapina. O hunter, good qualities like non-violence, which you have developed, are very astonishing. Adbhuta vyada. Vyada means the hunter. For those who are engaged in Lord's devotional service are never inclined to give pain. Haro, Hari Bhakto Pravrittaye to others because of envy. Na te suya paratapina. Now this is referring to whom? This verse. Yes, Partha.
Parvata Muni is telling to Mrigari.
Yes. Yes. Now, of course, Mrigari, if you see, right from a very sinful life, he straight away took up devotional service. Although he was in the Varnashram setup, he did not take up. But because he got association of such an exalted soul like Narad Muni, that's a special consideration, special mercy he got. So, he was able to, immediately give up sinful activity and take straight to pure devotional service. This is the quotation from Skanda Puran. It was spoken by Narad Muni to the reformed hunter Mrigari. Vaidi Bhakti Sadhanera Kailula Vivarna Raganuga Bhaktira Lakshan Suno Sanatana. My dear Sanatan, Suno Sanatana, I have now in detail described devotional service according to regulative principles. Now hear from me about spontaneous devotional service and its characteristics. So, Vaidi Bhakti Angas are described, and what are not the Angas? Varnashram is not Anga, Gyan and Varag are not the Anga. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu also goes very parallel. So, any questions on this you have? Of course, I'm not discussing parallelly Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu because then it will take many classes, each of the verses to discuss and the purpose of Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakra Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada summary study. It will require many classes. Those who would like to study, they are available and you can study them as a separate course. But any questions up till now? Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dhanvatana. Prabhu, just one clarification. We understand that Vardashram is definitely not Anga Bhakti, but it is definitely helpful for Bhakti because it creates, it gives platform for mode of goodness.
Uh-huh.
And Prabhu, in this regard, there is a ministry in ISKCON. It is headed by Vedugopal Prabhu, but I find it is not being given due importance. What could be reason?
Well, I cannot say much about it, but just you only carefully evaluate in your own life, and especially to many of the devotees practicing in your community, in your state, in your country, and all over the world. And if you observe that many are not able to steadily practice bhakti because of the influence of the monks. So we have to, and what to speak about that? Many are involved in activities which bring reactions, and that affects their bhajan also. Yes. So we have to do also for maintenance of our livelihood. We have to earn in a pure way. And the only way you can earn purely is not by doing any job, by only doing agriculture. For your kind information, agriculture is a pure activity because there is cows, there is land, and being with the cows, you'll get all the purity. So all the, at least the devotees who are not staying in the full-time devotees like in the ashram, all are engaged in jobs, and all that job, there is some reactions they are taking because of the kind of involvement in the job, the money in the source. What to speak about congregation? Even in the temple itself, those who are living full-time, the funds which come, they are all coming from which all sources we don't know, and the temple devotees have to bear the reactions. So that's why leading a pure life by which we can chant Hare Krishna and chant Shuddha should be our goal. And right now there is awareness about it, but everyone individually has to work on it. He has to individually work on it, be in such a kind of a setup where he can lead a pure life so that he can chant Hare Krishna. I have not met many, but once I saw one devotee in the train and immediately asked him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm doing agriculture." And I could see in his face, he was very happy and blissful. He had enough time to chant Hare Krishna, and he was all the time arranging, programs in his village, doing Sankirtan, and he was happy, doing his cultivation of agriculture. So one has to work on it individually. That's what I can say now. Is it okay, Prabhuji?
Right. Thank you.
Yes. Otherwise, one has to, come to a point where he can retire from all material activities when he gets retired, and then go to the dham and spend more time in doing his bhajan, which I have seen, devotees do that. But best is to lead a pure life, so that we can chant Hare Krishna. Okay. So let's now come to the second part. I would like to finish this. There are only 20 slides. Difficult to finish. Let us see. Okay. I'll not go in a hurry. We'll go slowly, but just wanted to mention that if I'm finished, then it will be good. Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, Ragatmika and Raganuga definitions, processes and characteristics of Raganuga Bhakti, conclusion and Falashruti. Again, Mahaprabhu is discussing very briefly here for your kind information. Very briefly. Rup Goswami elaborately discusses in I think around 30-40 verses Raganuga Sadhana. So in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Ragatmika bhakta mukhya vraja vasi jane tara anugata bhaktira raganuga name. The original inhabitants of Vrindavan are attached to Krishna spontaneously. Vrajavasi jane ragatmika, their atma has rag towards Krishna. That's why they're called as ragatmika bhaktas. Attached to Krishna spontaneously in devotional service. Nothing can compare to such spontaneous devotional service, which is called ragatmika bhakti. When a devotee follows in the footsteps of the devotees of Vrindavan, these ragatmika bhaktas, his devotional service is called raganuga bhakti. So raganuga bhakti means you start following the ragatmika bhaktas. Prabhupada. Oh, Prabhupada quotes Jiva Goswami. In his Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami states, Tad evam tad tad abhimana lakshana bhava visheshena swabhavika ragasya vaishishtya sati tad tad raga prayukta shravana kirtana smarana pada sevana vandanatma nivedana praya bhakti stesham ragatmika bhakti itya uchyate tadastadiyam ragam ruchyanu gachanti sa raganuga. When a pure devotee follows the footsteps of a devotee in Vrindavan, he develops Raganuga Bhakti. I don't know. I want to check because I also find it strange that Prabhupada just quoted the Jiva Goswami's verse, but how the translation is not there. So this is verse number Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 22. This was verse number 149. Oh, that's it. Prabhupada also quotes that from the Bhakti Sandarbha. Okay. I thought the translation might be there. Okay, now the definition of, okay, you might say, who is this Ragatmika? The definition of Ragatmika is there. Ishte swarasiki ragah paramavishtatata bhavet tanmaya bhavet bhakti satra ragatmikodita. When one becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Raga, according to one's natural inclination to love him, Ishte swarasika. So the natural inclination means Dasya Sakya Vatsalya Madhurya, and is fully absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord. Paramavishtata bhavet. Avishta, completely full absorption in the Lord. That state is called transcendental attachment. And devotional service according to that attachment is called Ragatmika. Satra Ragatmika Udota, or spontaneous devotional service. Oh, something is wrong here, I feel. Yeah, that's it. I think by mistake this has come here. Okay. So again, this verse is found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is the definition of Ragatmika Bhakti. I'm not going to go into detail, but this is the definition of Ragatmika. These are eternal associates of the Lord. These are Nitya Parikars. Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda Mai, the Gopas, the Gopis, they are all Ragatmika Bhaktas. Okay. Ishte Gad Trishna Ragera Swarupa Lakshan. Ishte Avishtata E Tatashta Lakshan. The primary characteristic of spontaneous love is deep attachment, Gad Trishna, for the Supreme Personality. Absorption in thought of him is a marginal content. Ishte Avishtatata E Tatashta Lakshan. Okay. So the Swarup Lakshan and the Tatast Lakshan of Ragatmika Bhakti definition is here. Because there is deep attachment, so the thoughts are also, the natural symptom is that the thoughts are also going towards that object of attachment. Avishtatara, absorption. Tanmayi, just like Strimayi. Ragmayi Bhakti Rahoy, Ragatmika Nam, Tashuni Lubda Hoy, Ono Bhagyavan. Thus, devotional service which consists of rag, deep attachment, is called Ragatmika, spontaneous love stories. Please remember, Raganuga Bhakti is not spontaneous devotional service. It is coming under sadhana bhakti. There is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and Raganuga sadhana bhakti. So Raganuga is sadhana bhakti. The rag is towards not directly Krishna, towards the eternal associates. They follow the ragatmika bhaktas. The ragatmika bhaktas have spontaneous loving service. If a devotee covers such a position, he is considered to be the most fortunate. Ta shune lubda. If he also, I also want to develop this mood of worshipping Krishna in the footsteps of Madhu Mangal or Sri Ram. And he has developed that intense spiritual greed in his heart and starts following their footsteps, the Ragatmika Bhaktas, then he is a Raganuga Bhakta. Lobha Vrajavasira Bhave Kare Anugati Shastra Yukta Nahi Mane Raganugara Prakriti. If one follows the footsteps of the inhabitants of Vrindavan out of such transcendental covertness, transcendental it is, please remember that. He does not care for the injunctions or reasonings of the Shastra. Now, please remember here, it doesn't mean that, he doesn't follow Shastra, because we cannot go now elaborately. We have discussed this in our separate seminar also called as Exploring Raganuga Bhakti. The process of practicing Raganuga Bhakti is also given in the Shastra. So what does it mean that Shastra Yukti nahi mane? That means his devotion is more impelled by greed and not impelled by the rules and regulations. He is more impelled to practice devotional service out of intense greed to attain that bhav, that mood of the eternal associates. So that is what it means. That is the way of spontaneous love, Raganugara Prakriti. Okay, let us see Prabhupada's Bhakti Siddhanta, Prabhupada's purport. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that a devotee is attracted by the service of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, namely the cowherdmen, Maharaj Nand, Mother Yashoda, Radharani, the gopis, and the cows and the calves. Now, Prabhupada says an advanced devotee is attracted by the service rendered by an eternal servitor of the Lord. So, to practice Raganuga Bhakti, you have to be an advanced devotee. This attraction is called spontaneous attraction. Again, I mentioned the attraction is not directly to Krishna, but towards the Ragatmika Bhaktas. Technically, it is called Swarupa Upalabdhi. So, as I was mentioning at the stage of Nishtha, as in the karma path, when one performs in Nishkam Karma Yoga and he attains the stage of Sthita Pragya, he becomes self-realized. Similarly, at the stage of Nishtha, one is self-realized. He knows his Swarupa. He is transcendental to the body. And the development of a spiritual body through the practice of Raganuga Bhakti starts from there. So technically, Prabhupada says it's called Swarupa Upalabdhi. This stage is not achieved in the beginning. In the beginning, one has to render service strictly according to the regulatory principles set forth by the revealed scriptures and the spiritual master. By continuously rendering service to the process of Vaidhi Bhakti, one's natural inclination is how? Gradually awakened. So first we have to come to at least the point of practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Ananya Bhakti, please remember that. This is called spontaneous attraction or Raganuga Bhakti. An advanced devotee situated on the platform of spontaneity is already very expert in Shastric injunction, logic and argument. So it doesn't mean that he doesn't use Shastri Yukti. That's what I was saying. When he comes to the point of eternal love for Krishna, no one can deviate him from that position, neither by argument nor by Shastric evidence. An advanced devotee has realized his eternal relationship with the Lord, and consequently, he does not accept the logic and argument of others. Such an advanced devotee has nothing to do with the Sahajas who manufacture their own way and commit sins by indulging in illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling, and if not, meat eating. Sometimes the Sahajas imitate advanced devotees and live in their own whimsical way, avoiding the principles set down in the revealed scriptures. unless one follows the 6 Goswamis, Sri Rupa Sanatana, Raghunath Bhatta, Sri Jiva, Gopala Bhatta, and Raghunath Das Goswami, one cannot be a bona fide spontaneous lover of Krishna. In this connection, Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Rupa Raghunath Pade, Habe, Akuti, Kabe, Ama, Bujabe, Se, Yugala, Pi, Riti. The Sahaja's understanding of the love affairs between Radha and Krishna is not bona fide because they do not follow the principle laid down by the 6 Goswamis. Their illicit connection and their imitation of the dress of Rupa Goswami, as well as their avoidance of the prescribed methods of the revealed scriptures, will lead them to the lowest regions of hell. So Prabhupada is avoiding how we should avoid the Sahaja mentality. These imitative Sahajas are cheated and unfortunate. They are not equal to advanced devotees, Paramahamsas. Debauchees and Paramahamsas are not on the same level. Okay. Now, Mahaprabhu defines Raganuga definition. After defining Ragatmika, he defines Raganuga. Virajantim abhivaktam brajavasi janadishu ragatmikam anusruta yasa raganugochate. Devotional service is spontaneous. In spontaneous love is vividly expressed and manifest in the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Virajitam abhibhaktam. So Ragatmika Bhakti is found in the inhabitants of Vrindavan. That means the eternal service. Devotional service that accords with their devotional service is called Raganuga. Ragatmika Anusruta. Following in the footsteps of this Ragatmikas, Yasa Raganugochati. That is called as Raganuga Bhakti. Devotional service following the wake of the spontaneous loving service. So the Raganuga Bhaktas follow the Ragatmika Bhaktas. So that's why it is called as Raganuga Bhakti. Prabhupada said this is found in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-270. This is the first verse of Raganuga Bhakti. First, Rupa Goswami defines Raganuga Bhakti, then he defines Ragatmika Bhakti, and then there is a very elaborate analysis there. Now, what are the qualifications of a Raganuga sadhak? Tat tad bhavadi madhurya shute dhiryad apekshate natram shastram na yuktim cha tallobat patya lakshanam. When an advanced realized devotee, mark Prabhupada words in his translation. Prabhupada is saying advanced and realized devotee. That means it definitely refers to one who has realized himself. Realized devotee hears about the affairs of the devotees of Vrindavan. Tat tad bhavadi madhurya shute. In the mellows of Shant, Das, Satya, Vatsal and Madhurya, he becomes inclined to one of these ways. Dhi yad apekshate. And his intelligence becomes attracted. Indeed, he begins to covet that particular type of devotion. When such covetousness is awakened, one's intelligence no longer depends on the instructions of Shastra or on logic and argument. Na Shastram, na cha yuktim, tal lobapatti lakshanam. It is awakened because of intense spiritual greed. And it is who is Adhikari? Advanced realized devotee. Again, Prabhupada says this is found in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-292. Prabhupada doesn't give elaborate purports to these, I think. Okay. Bhai antarihara duite sadhana, bhai sadhaka deha kare shavana kirtan, Mane nijya siddha deha karaya bhavana ratri dine kare vraja krishnera sevan. There are two processes by which one may execute this Raganuga Bhakti, external and internal. So in the sadhaka deha and in the siddha deha, because already he is a realized soul. So in his spiritual body, he starts at a manasic level, start doing, deep contemplation and absorption in the mind, because the mind is pure. The mind can focus. So in his bhajan, he is in his spiritual body doing service, deep absorption. That is called as Siddha Deha. In the Sadhaka Deha, he is following all the rules of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. He is doing also deity worship. He is doing Mandir Marjan. He is doing Kirtan. He is giving class. So in the Sadhaka Deha, he follows the 6 Goswamis. In the Siddha Deha, he follows the 6 Goswamis in their Manjari forms. So it's a very exalted level, you can see. And we cannot discuss much here about it. But in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is quite elaborately discussed. There are 2 processes by which one may execute this Raganuga Bhakti, external and internal. When self-realized, Prabhupada see very clearly saying, when self-realized, the advanced devotee externally remains like a neophyte and executes all the Shastric injunctions, especially concerning those concerning hearing and chanting. Sadhaka Deha kare Shravan Kirtan. So you cannot identify who is on a Raganuga platform. Only an expert can identify, because he seems to be doing all the things what a new devotee is also doing. But within his mind, in his original purified, self-realized position, he serves Krishna in Vrindavan in his particular way. He serves Krishna 24 hours a day, all day and night. Ratri dine kare, vraje Krishna Rasivan. So, see the adhikar to practice Raganuga Bhakti. That Nirantar Naam Loe, you have to come to the Madhyam platform. Your bhakti should be ahetuki apratihata. Then only Adanya Bhakti begins in one sense. We know that, right? So once one takes up to Ananya Bhakti, then the progress is very, very swift. Maybe from Mishra Bhakti to come to the point of Ananya Bhakti, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, Ananya, it might take many years, 20 years, 30 years, or few lifetimes. But once we come there, from there it is like very, very quick. Seva sadhaka rupena, siddha rupena chatrahi, tad bhava lipsuna karya, Vrajalokanusarata. The advanced devotee who is inclined to spontaneous loving service should follow the activities of a particular associate of Krishna in Vrindavan. He should execute service externally as a regulated devotee, as well as internally from the self-realized position. Thus, he should perform devotional service both externally and internally. So this is again from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Raganuga practice sadhana. Sadhak Rupena and Siddha Rupena. I mentioned already this. Sadhak Rupa, he follows all the external, in his regulative principles of a devotee. And internally, in his self-realized position, internally, he is meditating on the particular mood. Tad bhava lipsuna karya. He performs devotional service based on that mood. Again, Prabhupada quotes that this is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. That's it. Nijabishta Krishna Preshta Pachete Lagia Nirantara Seva Kare Antarmana Hana. Actually, the inhabitants of Vrindavan are very dear to Krishna. Nijabishta Krishna Preshta. Krishna Preshta means they are very, very dear to Krishna. If one wants to engage in spontaneous loving service, he must follow the inhabitants of Vrindavan and constantly engage in devotional service within his mind. Pachete lagya. If you want to follow in their footsteps, nirantar, constantly seva kare, antarmana, internally, in the Siddha Deha. Now, this is another verse which mentions what is the practice of a Raganuga Sadhaka. Krishnam smaram janam chasya preshtam nija samihitam tat kataratas chasyo puryadvasam vraje sada. Now, there are many 4 things spoken here. A devotee should always think of Krishna within himself. Krishnam smaram. Now, to practice Raganuga Bhakti, you should be always able to think about Krishna. Your thoughts don't go away from Krishna at all. Ananya cheta satatam. Ananyas chintayanto mam. These are the verses from the Gita which apply. So this is the first adhikar then for Raganuga sadhana. Krishna Smaram. You have come to the stage of Smaranam. And one should choose a very dear devotee who is a servant of Krishna in Vrindavan. Janam, whom Preshta Nija Samihitam. One should constantly engage in topics about that servitor and his loving relationship with Krishna, and one should live in Vrindavan. So, firstly, one should be on the level of Smaran. He should choose that particular devotee. Like, let us take somebody has developed a mood of a Vatsalya bhav, and his role model or her role model is Mother Yashoda. So he will be constantly absorbed in hearing the Bal Leela pastimes of Krishna, especially the Damodar Leela. So one should constantly engage in topics about that servitor and his loving relationship with Krishna. So this is the third thing. And Kuryad Vasam Brajetada. One should live in Vrindavan. If one is physically unable to go to Vrindavan, we should mentally live there. So there are 4 things mentioned here in this verse of the Anga or practice of Raganuga Bhakti. What are the 4 things? Who will say? Who will answer? What are the 4 things? Then we can know whether we are qualified to practice Raganuga Bhakti. What are the 4 things? Okay, Virendra Yadav Prabhuji, yes, I will show you the verse. You can refer it. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dhanvatpana. First is the devotee should always think of Krishna
Yes.
himself. And second is he should choose a dear devotee who is servitor of Krishna in Vrindavan, that is Ragatmika
Yes.
Bhakta.
Yes.
Next is he should constantly engage in topics about the servitor to whom he is following.
Tat Kata Ratas Chasa. Okay.
And the last is he should either physically or mentally reside in Vrindavan.
Yes. Now we know what is Adhikar for practicing Raganuga Bhakti. Yes. Are we able to, sitting anywhere, always think about Vrindavan? Even the 4th one we cannot fit in. So it's a very high qualification to practice Raganuga Bhakti. Again, Prabhupada doesn't give any purpose to these. He just says, this is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Dhasya Sakya Pitradi Preyasi Ragana Ragamarge Nija Nija Bhave Raganana. Krishna has many types of devotees. Some are servants, Das. Some are friends, Saka. Some are parents, Pitradi. And some are conjugal lovers, Preyasya or Gana. Devotees who are situated in one of these attitudes of spontaneous love according to their choice are considered to be on the path of spontaneous love service. Na karhichin mat parashant rupe nang shanti no me nimisho ledi hetiha esham aham priya atmasutascha saka guru surid daivam ishtam. This is from the Kapil Shiksha. There's a praman given that how a devotee who is attained Siddha, this is speaking from the Kapil Shiksha chapter 25, I feel. I'm sure it is 25. So Kapil is saying that how, they consider me Aham, Priya, very dear, Atma, Suta, Saka, Surid. O Mother Devavati, O emblem of peace, Shanta, Rupe. My weapon, the disc of mine, never vanquishes those for whom I am very dear. Aham Priya, for whom I am super soul, Atma, son, Suta, this is Vatsalya, friend, Saka, Shakara, Sakiras, spiritual master, well-wisher, worshipable deity, and desirable. Since the devotees are always attached to me, they are never vanquished by the agent of time. I told you, this is from 25. This was spoken by Kapil Dev to his mother Devahuti and is recorded in Srimad Bhagavatam. Kapil Dev instructed his mother in Sankhya Yoga, but the importance of Bhakti Yoga is mentioned here. Later, Sankhya was imitated by atheists whose system was founded by a different Kapil Dev, Rishi Kapil Dev. Okay. Pati putra surit bhratra pitravan mitravat harim ye dhyayanti sadodyuktas tebhyopi namo nama. This is the second reference he's giving. Let me offer my respectful obeisances again and again. Namo nama to those who always eagerly meditate on the Supreme Personality Godhead as the husband, pati, son, putra, friend, surit, bhratra, brother, father, pitravan, or intimate friend. Again, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Prabhupada doesn't give purport for this also. Eimato kare eba raganuga bhakti Krishnera charana tanra upajaye priti. If one engages in spontaneous loving service to the Lord, his affection for the lotus feet of Krishna gradually increases. Pitra ankure rati bhava hoya duinam yaha hai te vasa hana Shri Bhagavan. In the seed of affection, priti is priti, because of the sandhi. Ankur is seed. There is attachment which goes by two names, Rati and Bhav. Rati Bhava Hai Duinam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead comes under the control of such attachment. At the Bhav, Krishna comes under the control of that devotee. Okay, Prabhupada gives now here purport. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments on this verse. Externally, a devotee performs all the items of devotional service in 9 different ways, beginning with Shravan and Kirtan. And within his mind, he always thinks of his eternal relationship with Krishna and follows in the footsteps of the devotees of Vrindavan. If one engages himself in the service of Radha and Krishna in this way, he can transcend the regulative principles enjoined in the Shastras and through his spiritual master fully engage in rendering spontaneous love to Krishna. So one who is qualified in this way only can do it. In this way, he attains affection at the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna actually comes under the control of such spontaneous feelings, and ultimately one can attain association with the Lord. So at this, from Raganuga sadhana will mature into Raganuga sadhana, you can say as Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, and then he'll attain Bhav. At Bhava, Krishna comes under the control of his devotee. Yaha haite paye Krishnera prema sevana aita kahiluna abhidheya vivarna. That by which one can attain loving service to the Lord, I have described in detail as the execution of devotion, Abhidheya, called Abhidheya. So Abhidheya discussion is over. The process and the goal is what? Prayojan. So with Raganuga Bhakti will mature into Bhava. Bhava is love of Godhead, that is Prayojan. So Prayojan will be discussed in the next chapter. Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 23. Avidhaya sadhana bhakti ebe kailona sanatan sankshipta kailona vistarnaya varnam. My dear Sanatan, I have briefly described the process of devotional service in practice, which is a means for obtaining love of Krishna. It cannot be described broadly. Now please remember, Sanatana Goswami was instructed in one sense, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu itself, for 2 months. Rup Goswami was instructed for 10 days in the Dashashvamedha Ghat. And Rup Goswami later on was empowered by the Lord, Shakti Shancharila, to compose Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And who is Rup Goswami? He is the leader among the Goswamis. He is Rup Manjari from the spiritual world who has witnessed all these pastimes. It took him 17 years to compose Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And he was assisted by Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami was helping him to, keep the leaves ready. He used to edit the shlokas, and he himself also wrote a commentary on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So how important it is for us to study Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. That's the point. Abhidhaya sadhana bhakti shune ejan achirat paye se Krishna prema dhan. Whoever hears this description of the process of practice of devotional service very soon attains the shelter of Krishna and love, and in love and affection. So that's end of, I think, yeah, this is the last verse. I'm not confident. Yeah, it is there. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Yara Ash Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Das. Praying at the lotus feet of Shri Rupa and Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports on Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, 22nd chapter, describing the execution of devotional service. So here we end our discussion of Sanatana Shiksha, chapter 22. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Prabhuji.
Yes.
I have 3 questions.
One.
Prabhuji, yes. Here, so that means there are no Sokhiya, Madhurya, Raganuga Bhaktas, correct?
There are two.
Because in Raganuga Bhaktas, they are following in the inhabitants of Vrindavana. And one relationship is, it was mentioned that as a lover, as a lover. So here, so that means in Vrindavana, here, like the gopis, they never considered Krishna as the husband, but as a lover. It was, so that means husband relationship only comes in Dwaraka.
Correct. That is
so
called as Swakiyaras. But in Vrindavan, there is Parakiyaras, which is superior. In conjugal love, there is wedded and unwedded. And the Parakiyaras is considered superior, which is only found in Vrindavan. So that is what is the path given in Raga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti is only towards Vrajavasis. It is not towards Dwarkavasis. Then it is not Raganuga Bhakti. It is Vaidhi Bhakti.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is answered. Okay, my second question is that here, see, according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhuji, a person who is expert in Shastra and logic and argument is considered Uttama Bhakta.
That is for
And
adhikar for practicing bhakti. Kanishta Madhyama Uttama. Shastra Yukta Nipuna.
so those who are expert in Shastra, they're considered Uttama Bhakta. Correct?
Adhikar to enter into bhakti. Like somebody, cracks the IIT exam. Okay. He comes first rank. He is, highly qualified to now enter IIT. So similarly, a Uttam Adhikari, when he reads the Shastra, he has yukti, and he has faith in the Shastra. His faith is deep. So he immediately accepts and he takes up the practice very quickly. Whereas somebody he hears and he doubts whether it is right or wrong, and he's not able to understand also what the verse is speaking. So he'll take many years to understand. And with that understanding only, he'll further make progress. So it is taking up to the process of bhakti. That's what is being mentioned there. Shastra Yukta Nipuna. Got the point?
Okay. So here, Raganuga Bhakta, it was told here in one of the slides, Raganuga Bhakta is expert in logic, expert in Shastra. So Raganuga Bhakta is actually Uttama Bhakta or Madhyama Bhakta?
Okay, I got it. Usually it is a Madhyam Adhikari, as I mentioned, one who is, self-realized, it was mentioned, Prabhupada said there, if you remember, advanced devotee. So at what stage we cannot say sometimes, because ultimately it is greed. Greed is what is being, when he develops that intense greed to follow in the footsteps of the eternal associates, and when that greed awakens, and he will, he will now practice his devotion to attain that particular mood, and is impelled by that and not impelled by the injunctions of the Shastras. That is what we need to understand. Is it clear?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Prabhuji. And my third question is that in present day in the world, as far as ISKCON devotees are concerned, are there, could you tell Raganuga Bhaktas specifically? Examples of in present day in ISKCON?
See, one thing is that nobody who is on that platform will ever claim that I'm at that level, because it is a very coveted thing, and you'll also not be able to identify. It takes one to know one, they say. So
Yes.
we cannot, we cannot say that, oh, he is practicing Raganuga. We cannot say that also. And it's not right also, proper to say that. But
Okay, thank you.
one who is advanced, one who is expert in Shastras, by Lakshanas, he can understand. Otherwise, others also cannot understand. And nobody will ever give you an hint also. Will not even figure it out. And somebody who, tries to speak through his words, show that he's got spontaneity, you can identify that it is, bogus easily. Because you have to see his lifestyle, his acharan, how is his lifestyle. From that you can understand. If he's able to continuously chant the holy name, he's got ruchi, he's got rasa. But he's speaking about, lot of things, as though he has got that kind of bhava, but his bhajan is not there, which is according to that mood of bhava, what is suggesting, what is speaking, then you can understand that, it's not true. So you can understand that. But nobody is going to claim that I'm a Raganuga Bhakta. Nobody will tell that, because it's a very, very confidential thing. Only he will reveal it to his spiritual master, and his spiritual master will guide him in his internal meditation and practices. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions anyone has? Okay, so we'll stop here now. Thank you very much. Rangana Charan Prabhuji has a question. Yes. Save the best for the last.
Yeah, best. It's not the best. I cannot be the best. My reflexes are very poor. I just want to know, Uttama Bhakta, one is expert in all the literatures, all the spiritual literatures, and then he should be able to preach also the people. And third, is it the Jiva Daya, which is important?
Yes. Now, let me first clarify one important aspect. Now, adhikar to practice bhakti is Shraddhanusari, first thing. And Shraddhanusari, because there is some disturbance, Shraddhanusari, there is Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama. And for your kind information, we might be many years just going through this ladder of Kanish to Madhyam and coming to Uddham. And we are still now still in adhikar to practice bhakti. We are in that stage. That is very important for us to remember. Like, I'll give you a simple example. To enter IIT, you have to study 1 year and then crack the exam. And you study and don't crack the exam. So second year you study, third year you study, maybe fourth year you clear. So the 4 years what you have spent to crack the exam, that 4 years you're spending just to enter into IIT. Similarly, we are practicing bhakti, but we are still, traversing from Kanishta to Madhyama to Uttam. So we are studying Shastra now, but our understanding of Shastra might be not so deep, and understanding the import and the conclusions of Shastra might not. But as you keep on hearing over a period of time, the Siddhanta becomes clear. So now you get the Adhikari. As an Adhikari, you are on the Uttama platform. And from there, you take up to what? Ananya Bhakti. Especially at the Madhyam Adhikari platform, you become qualified to take up Madhyam Ananya Bhakti when you are self-realized. That's the point. So that is what first I wanted to state. Now, what was the other two parts in your question? Can you once again tell me, because I lost.
No. One is he should be expert in the
That I clarified now.
spiritual practices, spiritual meditations.
Yeah.
And secondly, he should be in a position to preach
Correct.
to everybody. And third is the Jiva Daya part of it. Where does it come?
Yes. Okay. Now, okay. So now, even a Kanishta can preach, a Madhyam can preach, and Uttam can preach also. But Kanishta can preach and give faith to someone, a little faith where he can take him to a certain degree. Now, the Madhyam is Shraddhavan. He is able to quote Shastra, he is able to understand the conclusion of Shastra, but he might be defeated by others who are more expert in logic, but he cannot be shaken. So he is also able to preach. He is also able to preach. But somebody who is having ruchi in chanting, who's an Uttam Adhikari, when he is preaching out of compassion. So there are higher degrees there in that sense. A Madhyama is preaching also because, he is relishing Shastra and he has compassion. But a higher degree of compassion, Jivadaya, is found in the Uttama Adhikari. Again, from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Adhikari point of view, I'm speaking. Is it clear now, Prabhuji?
Thank you, Prabhu. So Jivadaya is not generally found in a Madhyama Adhikari. It is in Uttama Adhikari.
Uttama Adhikari mo, Madhyam, it is there. Madhyam Adhikari has more, rasa for going and battling out, giving the scriptural knowledge. Uttam Adhikari has more compassion. That is the difference in the little rasa. Okay.
No, I am saying this with reference to the relationship between Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami. Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami. Okay, I'm able to hear. Are you able to hear me?
You are saying this in relationship with Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami.
Rupa Goswami, because Jiva Goswami was banished from Vrindavan on 2 occasions.
Oh, those are completely two different, they are completely different pastimes that you cannot relate to this discussion, Prabhuji.
No, but that means Rupa Goswami did not have their Jiva there.
No. That's a complete, that's not a right understanding, actually. That's a complete discussion, complete separate discussion, which we'll have to discuss it separately, the whole pastime.
Okay.
Pastime has to be elaborately narrated and, has to be understood in depth for that. Okay. But regarding your question about the compassion, yes, Madhyam Adhikari is more equipped with, scriptural knowledge. That's why he wants to go and present and convince others to take up devotion. But an Uttam Adhikari has also the element of deep compassion on the jivas. And when he preaches, he's able to affect more because of his, compassion, which is naturally springing from the soul. So that is the difference in the levels I spoke. Maybe some other time I can discuss with you regarding that pastime of Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami. Okay.
Thank you. Correction.
Yeah. Any other clarifications or questions? Yeah. So, okay, then we will stop here. So thank you very